Hi, hello. This is a video about my favorite characters in Warrior Cats. I wanted to make this mostly because, well, it seems fun, and I wanted to get this out of the way before I start to read all the remaining novellas and super editions that I have to get through, because I have no idea how they're going to influence my favorite characters. Like, I'm assuming they would shake things up. Well, maybe not my top 4 spots, but who knows. I'm also hoping this video isn't too long. I'm writing this intro before I actually get into things. Please. I'm probably going to be pretty careless with spoilers, so spoiler warning for the main books. Anyway, I'm going to quickly start with some honorable mentions. These are a bunch of characters who didn't make it into my top 10, but I want to talk about them very briefly anyway. Starting with Flametail. I made a video on him, so I'm kinda inclined to like him. He's kinda like the prototype to Shadowsight in a way due to the amount of suffering he does. He's even related to him. Rock. I hate Rock so much, but I also hate him so much it kinda wraps back around to me liking him. He starts off as this super mysterious cat we know nothing about, and then by Omen of the Stars, he just hates on Jayfeather. It's kinda funny. Definitely due for his own video, but I'm also intimidated by that. Froston. I didn't pay too much attention to Froston at the beginning of A Starless Clan, but by the time the second half of it came, I became super invested in Froston. Looking back, seeing how far she came is awesome. She has to force herself to acknowledge that some of the cats that she thought were closest to her greatly wronged her. Half Moon. She's my go-to for information on Jay's wing. I also like how tragic her character is. When Jayfeather appoints her as the first Stone Teller, she thinks Jayfeather is joking at first. She quickly finds out that he is in fact not joking. This obviously completely alters her life. I also thought she was super chill in Dawn of the Clans. Fernleaf. She's super cool. She is one of the few characters near the end of Dawn of the Clans that actually feels like a character. Purdy. How can you not love Purdy? He's super funny and super sweet. Curlfeather. She might be my favorite villain, and she's dead by the end of the first book in A Starless Clan. She is incredibly manipulative and has this plan to take over RiverClan, except she expects Splashtail to do all the dirty work and to act as her deputy. This obviously backfires. When she started appearing in the prologues for A Starless Clan, I grew to love her a lot. She is so cool in those prologues. Starflower. Where do I even start with Starflower? She's really funny. Her entire character is also so out there. Like, she's just so unique in a good way, I think. She's basically if Gaslight Gatekeep Girl Boss was a character. Not Jay's wing. Starlingpaw. I am currently super invested in his character. I could definitely see him shooting up to my top 10 depending on how the errands handle his character in the second half of Changing Skies. Dovewing. At first, I didn't really pay too much attention to Dovewing after my read-through of Omen of the Stars. Like, I enjoyed her character, but I didn't think too much of her. But Dovewing is one of those characters where the more she's brought up in conversation, the more she grows on you. I'm ready to defend Dovewing at a moment's notice. Okay, honorable mentions over. Onto the top 10. Jagged Peak. I like Jagged Peak a lot. He's definitely my favorite out of Quiet Rain's kits. I think it's awesome to see him grow over the course of Dawn of the Clans. He leaves for the Sun Trail by himself as only a kit, which is the push Greywing needed to join the group leaving the mountains. When they reach the forest, Jagged Peak permanently injures one of his legs while in Clear Sky's camp. This leads to him being kicked out of Clear Sky's group, and he struggles with self-worth. He also grows very resentful of Clear Sky, which is 1000% justified because Clear Sky is awful. Greywing can also be pretty nasty to him at times. You can't help but constantly root for Jagged Peak. Jagged Peak's interactions with a certain cat that appears later in this list are also amazing. Mothwing. Mothwing is pretty cool. I think her dynamic with Leafpool is fantastic. I also enjoy how adamant she is. While at first she doesn't believe in StarClan, the Great Battle makes it pretty obvious StarClan does exist. However, she still believes it isn't wise to blindly follow StarClan, which she is very correct for. She does this for a lot of things. Her clanmates got exiled for going against the imposter in the Broken Code. Too bad, she's going with them. I also like whatever is going on between Jayfeather and Mothwing. They kinda have unspoken beef with each other, but at the same time, they highly respect each other and would support the other without hesitation, like with the Burning Reed in Omen of the Stars. And she was technically leader for some time in A Starless Clan. She would probably be a bit higher, but I also kinda have to hold her behavior towards Shadowsight against her in the Broken Code. Though it is good that she apologizes for her actions, realizing she was in the wrong. Tallstar. Tallstar has been one of my favorites for several years. In fact, I think he was my first favorite when I first read the series. I think. I don't remember all too much from when I first read the books. And this was without reading Tallstar's Revenge. Funnily enough, Tallstar's Revenge was the third book I read when I got back into the series. It's really cool to see Tallstar go from some hot-headed cat with expectations set on him by his father to becoming level-headed and eventually leading Wind Clan. Like, if I had to choose which clan to live in as a warrior, I would definitely pick to live in Tallstar's Wind Clan. Also, he's gay. Yay! Violetshine. Similarly to Dovewing, I didn't really think too much about Violetshine after I read A Vision of Shadow. Like, I enjoyed her character, but I wouldn't consider her near my top 10. Mostly because I was kinda tuned out of the second half. Anyway, she's chosen to go through the horrors because we need at least one character to do so each arc now. It's pretty awful for her, and it also takes a while for things to improve for her. Skip forward to the Broken Code. She's one of the cats a part of the Lights in the Mist. She reunites with Needletail here. They're forced to confront Darktail here, and they both give him a beating and kill his spirit. It's genuinely such a highlight for me in the Broken Code and easily brought her into my top 10. Besides that, she's so sweet. When I eventually get around to rereading A Vision of Shadow, I wouldn't be surprised if Violetshine moved up a few spots. Holly. Not to be confused with Holly Leaf. She's my favorite character from Dawn of the Clans. I became incredibly invested in Holly the moment she showed up. Which is always a terrible idea when you're reading Dawn of the Clans blind, because they just kill off characters without any warning. Constantly. So now I was extremely attached to Holly and fearing the worst for her. Anyway, I think that Holly has a super fun personality and she makes any chapter 100 times better whenever she appears. She takes no nonsense and won't hesitate to call out any cat for anything. When I was talking about Jagged Peak earlier, I mentioned a certain cat. Well, that cat is Holly. I think they both complement each other so well and it's always a joy to see them together. I enjoy a lot of characters from Dawn of the Clans, but those two sweep, especially Holly. Guys, please read Dawn of the Clans. Leafpool. Guys, it's Leafpool. How could anyone even dislike Leafpool? In fact, I think disliking Leafpool even a little bit is a red flag, but I digress. I love Leafpool's POV in the New Prophecy so much. I mean, come on, it's Leafpool. And then she's forced to make the most difficult decisions. It just physically hurts to see her in Power 3 unable to show her kids the love of a mother. And it just gets even worse for her when it's revealed she is the mother of the three. Initially, all three of them react so negatively to her being their mother. Like, no, that's Leafpool. And then Leafpool just gets rotated around a few clans during A Vision of Shadow to act as the medicine cat, which is funny, but also kinda sucks because that means less of Leafpool. Leafpool also has some of the best interactions with other characters. You'll notice that a lot of these characters appear in this list. Leafpool and Squirrelflight are pretty much an unstoppable duo. They have the closest relationship with each other and are willing to make sacrifices for the other. Leafpool and Mothwing are the best as friends. Definitely just friends, The whole "because I believe in you, Leafpool" is just a showcase of their friendship. Yup, totally not something else. Leafpool and Jayfeather might have some of my favorite interactions in the series. It's always fun to see Leafpool call out Jayfeather for his attitude. And while they work together in the Medicine Cat Den, they have opposing viewpoints at times. Like with the whole Deathberries situation. Leafpool hates the idea of ever keeping Deathberries in the Medicine Cat Den, while Jayfeather is so fascinated by Deathberries. And Jayfeather also pretends like he doesn't care too much about Leafpool being his mother, but that's a total lie. Completely false. He is so distraught by her death that the other Medicine Cats actually have to intervene. Okay, I need to stop. I'm making this about Jayfeather now. Briarlight. Okay, so you know how I said it was a red flag to dislike Leafpool? Same thing for Briarlight, but times 1,000. I think it's actually just impossible to dislike Briarlight. She's genuinely so sweet. I get so intensely upset whenever I think about Briarlight because I miss her so much. She added so much to the scenes whenever she was present. You know how I said that I thought Jayfeather and Leafpool have the best interactions in the series? Yeah, I lied. It's Jayfeather and Briarlight. These two are actually unstoppable together. They both have so many things that they do for one another during the 2 arcs that they're together in the Medicine Cat Den. I'm not even joking, I could probably do a whole video on it. These two are the #1 best friends in Warriors. That being said, River of Fire is one of the books in Warriors that I straight up do not want to reread because of Briarlight's passing. If you want to ruin your entire week, just read River of Fire. I'm not joking, keep that book away from me. Tawnypelt. Tawnypelt very recently became one of my top 3 characters in Warriors, which is honestly surprising to me because now I realize it should have happened way sooner. Don't get me wrong, I liked Tawnypelt in the past, but I wouldn't consider her even near my top 10. In fact, I would probably have her kits higher than her. Not Tiger Star 2 though. Definitely not Tiger Star 2. So, what happened? Well, Changing Skies happened, and she clicked for me. A ton. She jumped straight into my top 3 from Changing Skies alone. This might sound a little weird, but she's kinda like if Jayfeather was more direct with his feelings, which also kinda makes her Jayfeather before Jayfeather, except not really because Jayswing technically existed before her, but I digress. She kinda gets put on the back burner during the New Prophecy because a rat bite puts her out of commission. After that, she does stay fairly relevant, temporarily staying in ThunderClan in Power 3. Afterwards, her life kinda sucks because 2 of her kits die in 2 consecutive arcs. You know, the 2 kits that I actually liked. And then the whole Shadow Clan leadership thing happens, which then leads to Rowenclaw dying, and then Brambleclaw kinda dies in the Broken Code, and then she's temporarily held prisoner in a Starless clan, so Tawnypelt just isn't having a good time. She finally gets some much needed spotlight in Changing Skies though. I love her narration so much. Like, I love it when characters just inwardly dish out insults left and right. Like, for example, Jayfeather of course, and early a Starless clan Nightheart. I also really enjoy how reflective she is with her path in life. She's constantly thinking about how her move to Shadow Clan impacted her relationships with other cats, especially Brambleclaw. And while she doesn't truly regret it, she can't help but feel upset regardless. I feel like I should probably also acknowledge the elephant in the room that is Tawny Crow. I personally like it, please bear with me. If it was just your typical Tom and She-Cat relationship where they magically fall in love, I wouldn't care one bit. Cough cough, Moonpaw and Goldenpaw, cough cough. But it's Tawnypelt and Crowfeather. Crowfeather is, well, Crowfeather. Tawnypelt is constantly like, oh my Star Clan, I like that guy. Crowfeather, Crowfeather. That idiot who's been through 3 different relationships. That Crowfeather. What is wrong with me? It's just so bad that it kinda wraps back around to being good in a way. Like, it's just so out there, and then when we do find out Tawny and Crow share feelings for one another, Tawnypelt is like, actually, I have a prophecy to worry about. She's so iconic. Tree. Guys, I do not play around with Tree. Tree is actually such a unique specimen, and I cherish him so dearly. We first learn about him when the medicine cats receive a prophecy about a cat with 6 toes. Yes, this is the first thing we learn about Tree. He has 6 toes on one of his hind legs. Anyway, he can speak to ghosts. This is unsurprisingly much more relevant than his 6 toes. He helps out with the aftermath of all the Darktail stuff and joins SkyClan, except he's like, really bad at being a warrior, and could care less about being one. So he tries to be a medicine cat, and that also doesn't work out. Great, what do? Well, we give him his own role. He's the first mediator for the clans, and the only mediator, ever, seriously, but he's damn good at it. When he actually wants to mediate though. He's also against the conformity present when it comes to the clans, trying to put that way of thinking into his kits. While the ways of clan life can be good, they're not the answer to everything. Which is honestly so refreshing to see in a character in Warriors. Tree is also just really smart. He immediately picks up on the imposter's ulterior motives to divide the clans, and typically sorts out any issue whenever he does get involved in them. And he's also incredibly caring. He cares immensely about his family, has that one-on-one conversation with Bristlefrost in the Broken Code, comforts Breezepelt when Crowfeather enters the Dark Forest, which is like, really funny to consider. Tree is acting as a better father figure than Crowfeather, and Tree is younger than Breezepelt. Like, dude. He also brings Frostpaw back from being a ghost. Can you imagine if he wasn't there? Dreadful scenario. Tree is also incredibly funny. It's always a joy to see him on page. Live, love, laugh, think Bush. And finally, you may have guessed it, but it's Jayfeather. That shouldn't be surprising at all. Jayfeather is literally me, for better or for worse. Like, I personally relate to Jayfeather heavily. Like, nobody even compares to Jayfeather for me. He's my favorite character of all time. I love Tree, Tawnypelt, Briarlight, Leafpool a ton, but Jayfeather. Jayfeather is on a whole other level. I actually have no idea where to start with him. His POV is so entertaining. His narration is my favorite out of the whole series, unsurprisingly. Jayfeather does not get old for me ever. Like, even when there's nothing really happening in this story, Jayfeather will still throw an insult at some unsuspecting cat to keep your attention. It's also always fun to see him reflect in his POV, because occasionally, you'll just be hit with a wall of his thoughts. Jayfeather's relationships with other characters are also some of the best and most interesting in the series. I already mentioned Mothwing, Leafpool, and Briarlight, so I don't think I need to mention them again. Jayfeather has some pretty cool interactions with Cinderheart and Poppyfrost. Jayfeather helps Cinderheart strengthen her previously broken leg. Jayfeather doesn't hesitate to risk his life to defend Poppyfrost when Breezepelt threatens to kill her. And there's others too. Jayfeather subtly encourages Nightheart to find his true self during the first half of a Starless clan. Jayfeather risks his life attempting to save Flametail from drowning. Jayfeather is harsh with Alderheart during his apprenticeship, but also praises him greatly for standing up for what he believes in. Seeing Jayfeather and Fuzzball interact is really funny. Jayfeather's obsession with the Power 3 prophecy in the Rise of the Dark Forest also negatively impacts his relationship with Dovewing and Ivypool. He prioritizes the prophecy over the well-being of himself, Dovewing, and Ivypool, which just leads to their relationships with each other being a big mess. Jayfeather also has very interesting relationships with his adoptive parents, Squirrelflight and Brambleclaw. For a while, he resents Squirrelflight and doesn't see Brambleclaw as a father after the fire scene. He does eventually learn to forgive Squirrelflight though. In fact, he's very quick to defend her in the Broken Code when she's blamed for Ashfur's actions. Somehow. However, during the Broken Code, he still doesn't view Brambleclaw as his father. This changes by changing skies though. When Jayfeather speaks to Brambleclaw as he's dying, he appreciates how Brambleclaw was the only father there for him, because Crowfeather is absolutely not a father figure. And then Moonpaw and Jayfeather. Jayfeather cares so much for Moonpaw, and Moonpaw is so confused by how some of the younger cats around the camp view Jayfeather, because Jayfeather has only been nice to Moonpaw. Jayfeather is also immediately aware of Moonpaw having issues. In fact, as a result of this, Moonpaw leaves ThunderClan without seeing Jayfeather. Some of Jayfeather's plotlines are also just ridiculous. You have the stick, like, the stick Jayfeather nearly drowns himself for on multiple occasions because he loses it, and then he ends up shattering it, which is also such a great moment by the way. You have the whole Jayswing situation, don't even get me started on that. Jayfeather's fascinations with Deathberries and Sunrise is also something very much worth noting. Everything in Jayfeather's life up until then has been out of his control. His involvement in the Power 3 prophecy, out of his control. The circumstances surrounding his birth, out of his control. Being born blind, out of his control. However, he realizes Deathberries let him control life, quite literally. His fascination with them is such a cool detail. Also, he appoints both the first and most recent Stone Teller. Like, wow. Okay. I think that's just about it for everything that comes to mind about Jayfeather. Those were my top 10 cats and some honorable mentions. Goodbye forever.